So within the field of transnationalism, until the 2000s, there were hardly any studies that were published on the return migration of second and third generation immigrants. In fact, scholars had mostly focused on the activities of foreign-born immigrants. Only a few research papers have dealt with the repatriation of Hungarian immigrants, and even these mostly concern the first generation, so the foreign-born generation. This is even more true for the Hungarian Americans, for up to now, most of the papers have discussed the repatriation of the first generation. Between 2008 and 2019, I carried out 86 qualitative, mostly in-depth interviews in New Brunswick, in Budapest, Hungary, and some of them on Skype. I conducted about half of these for my master's thesis and about half of them for my doctoral dissertation. I've been acquainted with the New Brunswick community since my childhood because my father was a visiting professor in mathematics in New Jersey for several occasions for longer periods of time. So parts of this research were published in a fast-shift volume for Dr. Tibor Frank, and it originally grew out of a research paper that I submitted for Dr. Csilla Barta's class on bilingualism. Regarding the sociological background of the respondents, between 2011 and 2017, I interviewed 10 Hungarian Americans who were either born or raised in New Jersey and who came to live in Hungary for a definite or an indefinite period of time. The interviews took place in Budapest, and one of them took place over Skype. Previously, I had interviewed 4 of them in New Brunswick as part of my research for my master's thesis in 2008. 5 of my interview subjects were born in New Brunswick. One of them came to Hungary at age 12, and the rest of them were not from New Brunswick, but from different cities like Passaic and Garfield, New Jersey, but all of them had contacts with the community. So they were either married to someone from New Brunswick or taught at the Hungarian school. There were mixed marriages are common in New Jersey, so it's difficult to assign a clear-cut generational category to everyone. So here I mean that some of them have a parent who's a DP and a mother who came in the 1970s. So, however, 5 of them belong to the second generation. So one of them came at age 12, which makes him a 1.5 generation immigrant, and the rest were between the second and the third generation. There was one person who was practically a third generation Hungarian. Their parents and grandparents have left Hungary after World War II in 1956 or in the 1970s. My research questions were the following. Just a minute. So from a sociological point of view, I was interested in finding out to what extent my interview subjects were able to fit into local Hungarian culture, whether they or their children continue the regular Hungarian activities such as scouting or folk dancing. I also asked them if they had experienced any shift in their identity after moving to Hungary. From a sociolinguistic point of view, I was interested in their language use. I was especially eager to find out what language parents use with their children. And if there were any noticeable changes in my informant's Hungarian language skills and speech patterns after they moved to Hungary. Due to the shortage of time, I will not be able to discuss the purely sociolinguistic aspects of my research. But you can find them in the paper that I published in Hungarian. Okay. So the people I asked had different reasons for return. Some of them sought adventure. Some of them came to Hungary because tuition fees are lower in Hungary. Some of them came to study at the Balassi Institute and then stayed in Hungary. Others were drawn here by family ties, such as a Hungarian-born spouse, or repatriated parents. And some of them were drawn here by previous summer vacations. Two of my interview subjects have stated that local Hungarians sometimes think that they were unsuccessful in the United States or that they were not able to integrate, but this is not true. They left behind well-paying jobs in the United States. And although most of them did not state this overtly, it's very probable that they came out of a desire to resist assimilation. Many years after the interview, one of my informants, who's a friend of mine, told me that one of the reasons why she left the United States and decided to come to Hungary because she saw that the quality and the quantity of Hungarian spoken in New Brunswick was decreasing, and she was disturbed by this. And she also wished to find a Hungarian spouse, and later she did. In 2017, and also later, Peter Gyurica, a journalist, published a collection of interviews with Hungarian returnees, and this is called Visszidensek. The volumes are called Visszidensek. All of the people he interviewed had a Cold War background. And similarly to what I have found, the people he talked to also had a strong nation-building desire, and they were drawn here also by an appreciation for folk culture. So although a large number of Hungarians settled here from the United States and also from Hungary, some of them, so most of them have developed only superficial ties with the local population. Unfortunately, the integration of diasporic return migrants, so people who come to settle in the land of their ancestors, is not always very fortunate. Many people experience disillusionment. They have high expectations. Sometimes this disappointment leads to a new return migration, so a counter return migration to where they were born. One of my informants has stated that there are two ways a person can integrate. One is by establishing yourself financially, so when you set up a home, and the other is when you create bonds with the local population. And so that the second one proved to be more difficult for him. Several people said that it's not easy to find a common voice with the locals. This comes from the fact that although they've kept many Hungarian customs, they've drawn their mentality from the American school system. For instance, the general optimism of Americans can be contrasted with pessimism that many Hungarians have. And this was especially true in the 1980s when informant number 9 came to study in Budapest. And at that time, there was a shortage of products and a lack of choice in the shops. And her university mates looked at her as if she had come from another planet because of her optimism. Also, the lack of cultural or local knowledge can cause a problem, especially for people who have excellent Hungarian language skills. I know one person who lost a deal because he did not know where Mátyás Pintz is. Mátyás Pintz is a well-known restaurant, or it used to be well-known during the communist times, especially at that time. And he asked, where's Mátyás Pintz? Is it in Mátyásbrod? But Mátyásbrod is a different district in Budapest. Also, somebody told me that someone else from New Jersey who never lived in Hungary but has a very good Hungarian accent told me that sometimes people look at him strangely when he does not know things that everybody should know in Hungary. He said it's like if you ask someone, what's an Empire State Building? Yeah, and so he said that if he had an accent in Hungarian, or if he was asking this in English, people would not be looking at him strangely. So most of the people I talked to did not plan to settle permanently in Hungary. This corresponds to what Sosik Isbarian has found about Armenian Americans who go back to the land. It's not really the land of their ancestors, but the Republic of Armenia. They go back to the Republic of Armenia, and she says that they're actually sojourners in the sense that they do not plan to settle permanently. Yes. And just like the Armenian Americans who have kept their physical homes in their host country as a security blanket, I've also spoken with someone who has kept his house in America and pays bills and Social Security and taxes on time so that one day he could return to New Brunswick. Most of the Hungarians who are involved in the New Brunswick and Passaic communities have a dual Hungarian-American identity, according to Károly Nagy. This is supposed to be 2009. The primary socialization of most Hungarians raised in the USA took place among Hungarians, whereas the secondary socialization took place in the American school system. So they've acquired the values, customs, and language of both cultures. And he says that it's only possible to have this kind of dual identity when the value systems of the two countries do not contradict each other, because in times of political or military conflicts, this becomes increasingly difficult. Annie Michaelian wrote that with the participation of the United States in World War II, ethnicity faded once again as a dimension in American identity because the unity of the nation was at stake. Yes. So the dual identity of Hungarian Americans is manifested in their bilingualism and in mixing the two languages. They apply both code mixing and code switching in their speech. Although linguistic interference is normal in the case of bilingual people, Two of my informants have told me that they prefer to use both languages because they are emotionally attached to both of them. I examined whether there were any changes in the ethnic return migrants' language use, attachment to certain ethnic symbols, cultural practices, or ethnic identity. The main identity components of the Hungarian Americans living on the East Coast are language use and folk dancing. Also, scouting plays an important role, although that's an activity, it's not a component, or sorry, yes, it's not a component. Although for most of my informants, the Hungarian component of their identity is stronger, some people might experience that when they move to Hungary, their American counterpart becomes stronger. Regarding family language use, many people in New Brunswick try to speak only Hungarian to their children until they reach age 5. Tula Barta calls this the authoritative model of language use. This actually still happens today, and it is still true for sometimes for the third and sometimes for even the fourth generation, that they are raised this way. It's very common among families with a DP background. The displaced persons were people who left Hungary after World War II. The same strategy is used by the Hungarian Scouts, and the founder of the Hungarian Scout Association abroad, Gábor Bodnár, was also a DP, and he stuck to the rule that only those children could be admitted to the Hungarian Scouts who were fluent in Hungarian. Based on my interviews, I found that the newly settled families who arrived from Hungary after the fall of socialism do not apply, do not apply this language use strategy. It is rather practiced by the DPs, the 1956ers, and the later Cold War immigrants. Most of them have acknowledged that it was very easy for them to learn English. It didn't cause them any problems. And they also knew that once their child would start school, their Hungarian language skills would start to fall behind. I suspect that this attitude probably came from the fact that the GPs had lived in Austria and Germany for many years before coming to the United States, and they had already experienced, according to Attila Marosvári, that their children's dominant language became German and not Hungarian. Getting back to the returnees, the majority of my informants who've settled in Hungary stated that even if they speak English at a native or a near native level, since they were brought up speaking Hungarian at home, it does not come naturally for them to speak English with their children, or only English with their children. This might also come from the fact that people in New Brunswick tend to use Hungarian with children to have them learn the language. And this is true even if the second generation tends to use English among themselves, partly because English is their dominant language. 6 out of 10 of my informants had children at the time of the interviews, while 4 of them were single and therefore didn't have any children yet. Only 2 people stated that they do speak English with their children. Informant number 5 was intermarried to an American. Her 3 children were born in America. She started talking to her oldest son in Hungarian when he was 6 months old, and then switched to Hungarian. She moved to Hungary in 2007 with her children, and she's told me that she still thinks in English most of the time, and she especially tends to use English in situations when she feels anger, when it's difficult to control her speech. Informant number 9 has been living in Budapest since her university years. Her children were born in Hungary, and she said that it's part of her identity that she can express herself more freely in English. But when her children were born, it didn't feel natural for her to talk to them in English because she was also raised in a Hungarian speaking household. And when her children reached a few years of age, she consciously started talking to them in English. Today, so for instance, when they were traveling on the tram, she talked to her child in English, and her daughter would respond to her in Hungarian. Later, they also spent a semester in the United States. She said that she primarily discusses her emotions in English with her children now as they are adults, with her children who are now adults. My other 4 interviewees rather preferred alternative methods for teaching English to their children. One of them had them watch DVDs in English, and another family paid a private teacher who's a native speaker. Informant number 4, sorry, my slide is wrong, but said that his wife wanted him to speak in English with their children. And he told his wife, who's a native of Transylvania, that he would be willing to speak to the children in English if she in turn talked to them in Romanian. And that's when the wife understood his attitude. Since then, since the interview, he put his children into an English, into an international preschool in Budapest. Okay. So in conclusion, I would like to say that even though we're living in an age of multiculturalism, the force of assimilation is still very strong in the United States. By the 3rd and 4th generations, very few people speak the language of their ancestors, not to mention the factor of intermarriages. Although most of the people I spoke with did not state this overtly, but it is highly probable that their return was caused by a desire to resist assimilation. Most of my interview subjects do not wish to settle permanently in Hungary. They've maintained an active relationship with the diaspora, with their family members and friends in the diaspora. Most of them do not intend to completely assimilate into the local Hungarian population. They cannot fully identify themselves neither with monocultural Hungarians and neither with monocultural Americans. Although most of them speak Hungarian to their children, the interference of the English language can still be felt in their speech, which remains a crucial part of their identity. Thank you for your attention.